Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Brian P. Easton, the author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series. This is Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. Welcome back, friends and neighbors, for the start of our 7th season here at the Werewolf Bar. I want to thank you for watching us over the last 6 years, and I'm looking forward to not only this season, but many more to come. And so, with that, I drink to you with our creature of the night. Wouldn't be Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter without a little whiskey. So I hope you like the new opening sequence that we put together. It's something we've been playing around with to kind of keep it fun, keep it interesting, and also to make the title sequence shorter than it has been in the past. So last month, I shared with you some new cover art for the Kindle versions of the original trilogy, which celebrates 15 years with Permuted Press for the first 2 books, and 10 years with Permuted for the Lineage. Now I'll say this again, this cover art is only being applied to the digital versions of the books, not the hard copies. That just turned out to be cost prohibitive, and when 2025 is over, we'll go back to our original covers. So this new artwork is definitely for a limited time only. Well, in just a few more days, we're going to have a new Wolfman movie to sort out. Of course, I've always been a big fan of the Wolfman and his movies, but I've been a little more than apprehensive about this new one. What press it has received has been a little baffling with the things they've been giving away and showing, but the werewolf's appearance in this thing is a major pain point with me. Ever since they showed that person in a costume at Universal Studios promoting what looked like, you know, the old homeless werewolf man. But we'll have to get into that more next month when we've had a chance to see it and had time to digest it. But until then, let's reflect on the 2 Wolfman films that came before it. To help us do that is MB Press publisher Miles Boothe and Son, who formed a new YouTube channel for horror reviews called X and Z.
A movie made in 1941, a movie made in 2010. Both feature some of the most popular actors of their times, and both are about werewolves. This is X and Z Horror Movie Reviews, and I'm X with your Gen X perspective.
I'm Z with your Gen Z perspective.
And we're going to get right into it. So, The Wolfman, the original, 1941. This one kicked off the werewolf craze. I think it was the first, not the first werewolf movie, but the very first popular werewolf movie. It was such a success in its time that it had 3 sequels, despite the fact that the Wolfman died in the first one.
You would have thunk.
Yep, it was a bit of a surprise. It's a great movie as far as the Universal monster movies go. It's black and white. It's everything that you've seen, the classic imagery, some of my favorite horror movie imagery, the forest scenes with the fog all over the ground. You know, it really set the mark. And it's been something that Hollywood has tried to recreate ever since then. And I don't know that they've ever really succeeded, although many have done some great werewolf films. All right. This movie was directed by George Wagner, and it starred Lon Chaney Jr., Claude Rains, Evelyn Ankers, I forget how to pronounce it, And Bela Lugosi, a name everybody knows, also plays a part, although he's not the Wolfman. That would be Lon Chaney Jr. And it's the classic story that we have all come to know about the Talbot family. They're in merry old England, and the son comes home from America to discover a werewolf problem. And in this case, it's centered around a camp of gypsies. That's going to change for 2010, but that's okay. So this movie is it's very notable for a couple of things. Number one, the sensibilities of the time. So despite the fact that Lon Chaney Jr., Larry Talbot is the hero, he's also a bit of a peeping Tom and a little heavy-handed with the ladies. So some of the things that would not fly these days, but you know, that's okay. That was back then, you know, different times.
Many years ago and all.
Many years ago. Also, this movie was known for some of the earliest very good special effects, and very good being a generous use of terms. We are all familiar with the classic Wolfman look, the face, the look, and how they achieved it. You know, it was all physical effects back then. I mean, they had to glue hair on the faces and things like this. And it's notable for its transformation scene, which was, I believe, the first time that we've seen a man transform into a werewolf on screen. In this case, it was the man's legs. Don't know. Rumor has it that it took an entire day to film that. And it's just kind of a time lapse where the legs get hairier and hairier and hairier. And this is, of course, after he's been bitten by the werewolf, and then he turns into a werewolf himself. So, you know, on that note, could they have done a better job with special effects? It's tough to say. Special effects are hard to achieve. They just, you know, you never know what's going to happen when you're trying to create something that hasn't been seen before, and you know, you never know what you're going to get. All right, this movie is also known for the screenplay written by Kurt Siodmak, and a lot of people kind of don't realize this, but he truly is the father of modern werewolves, because he took a original screenplay. This is not based on a book or a legend per se. I mean, you know, werewolves have been around for many centuries, but he added the poem, the famous poem, "The Autumn Moon is Bright," and that whole bit. He also made silver the only element to be able to kill werewolves. That didn't exist before this movie. And he brought in the full moon concept. That was not a thing either. So all of these elements were brought in by this one screenwriter, and they were so good and the imagery was so powerful that they've lasted all these years, and now it's just ubiquitous with werewolf lore. So, as you can see, I'm a big fan of the 1941 original. Now we're going to kick it over to see what he has to say.
The characters in this movie, the 1941 movie, are not overdone. They're just right, and they're very likable, very easy to like. You don't sit around like, maybe this character could have been, they could have developed them a little bit better. No, they're just right. And so, moving along, the movie also has a fantastic pace. It gets to the point. It does not dilly-dally with exposition, doesn't try to explain a lot of things. There's not a lot of backstory for unimportant side characters. None of that. It's only 70 minutes long total for the entire movie. So it's a really fun movie. It's kind of like going on a roller coaster. It's only like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but wow, it's a lot of fun. So other than that, it doesn't try to be more than it is. So a lot of movies now have like philosophical meanings or deeper meanings. There's something that just doesn't fit in. It's like It's the Wolfman. Special effects in this movie are quite good for its time. Like you were saying, they had to glue hair and fur to his legs. Now, this could probably be done in 45 seconds now that we have CGI and computers, but it's impressive with what they did back in 1941.
And it has that look of realism, too.
Exactly.
I think that we miss.
And the Wolfman is actually a wolf man. It's not a monster, and it's not exactly a man. It's a wolfman. It's a mix. It's an actual mix. It's not going too monster. It's not going too human. It's perfect. A lot of just rights in this movie. Jumping over to 2010, the special effects are pretty good. They're okay. Like, there's some parts that they did right. Such as in the asylum scene, he transforms, the main character, protagonist, he transforms into a werewolf. And the scene is quite iconic, and it is quite well done. I must say, I do like this scene in particular, but there are some other scenes, such as the final fight scene between him and the other werewolf, who also turns out to be his father, is kinda not great. I don't know. When I first watched it, it was like, okay, but then like thinking back, I'm like, wow, that sucked. Bad. But that is to say, the movie is entertaining to some degree. It's got a lot of exposition in the beginning. It's like, could have gone without the 45 minutes. But there's another scene near the beginning of the movie that kind of kickstarts the whole movie. And that is when the protagonist is at a festival or camp of some sorts.
It's a gypsy camp.
It's a gypsy camp. And there's a werewolf running around and people are hunting it and he's killing people and all this. And so the protagonist goes to hunt this werewolf and he ends up getting bitten on the shoulder and the curse is transferred to him. And now he's a werewolf. The protagonist in this movie feels like Batman, just without the suit. He's very emo, he's very emotional. And this is not what we saw back in 1941 where the guy was simply trying to get the girl. This is much different. He is very emotional. I'm not even kidding. Watch the movie. It's Batman. It's Batman, just without the really low voice. And he's not all about vengeance. So, other than that,
A little bit of vengeance.
I mean, a little bit. He's not vengeance. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to say is that the villain, the father, the curse holder in this movie, it's okay. He's okay. He's not a bad villain, in my opinion. He's okay. I don't really see why he's evil. Not really seeing a whole lot of motive for him to be evil, but he's evil. And he does an okay job. So, I'm gonna have to say, 2010 Wolfman, not my favorite, but, what are you gonna do?
I have always liked the 2010 film, and it's just drenched in its gothicness. It's the kind of movie that I can put on the TV and just leave it on, because every time you turn around, it's this, Victorian haunted, like, werewolf story the way that you want it to look. And it checks all the boxes in that department. So this one was directed by Joe Johnston, very experienced director, a lot of hits under his belt. Larry Talbot in this one is played by Benicio del Toro. His father is played by Anthony Hopkins. The lady love interest is Emily Blunt. And for good measure, Elrond is in there. That's right, Agent Smith. It's Hugo Weaving playing the inspector. And he still kind of looks like he wants to say Mr. Anderson here and there, but he doesn't. This movie, wow, it's got a lot of people that like it and love it. It's got a lot of people that don't. I fall into the like it, love it category myself, but I get it. So it does drag in some places. And there is an exposition issue. And some of the motivations here and there are a little paint by numbers. And of course, the final scene that you had talked about could have been better. Okay,
You
so
can say it without
yeah,
the flames. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's
All
nothing
right.
I can do.
The actors all do a really good job. Anthony Hopkins, I think we have to call, is the standout here. Usually is in his movies, although the Hannibal Schnauzer at the end is a little, I don't know, grandfatherish in its execution for the special effects. But overall, I would say that 2010 was at least a decent remake, and in my opinion, a very good remake of the original. And again, we've had a lot of werewolf movies over the years. Very few have made the mark of what I would call a good movie. I mean, just a handful, really. But this is one of them and does a very good job. Now, we are counting down to the new Wolfman movie. We reviewed The Invisible Man by Leigh Whannell, who is going to be the director of the new Wolfman. It comes out this coming Friday. We're going to see it. We're going to review it. So look for that coming up. And until then, I'm X.
I'm Z.
And we appreciate you watching. So long.
Okay.
Okay.
And there is a blooper reel that follows. But if you want to see that, you're going to have to go over to the YouTube channel, to which you'll find the link in the description below. So yes, I share a lot of X's views on both of those movies, and a good deal of Z's as well. So starting with the original, my point of view, and let me just say this from Flagfall, that these movies aren't just werewolf movies. They are the Wolfman movies. You understand? Lawrence Talbot might not have been the first werewolf to grace the silver screen, but he's sure the one that stands out and stands alone. And if the guy in the new Wolfman movie isn't named Lawrence Talbot, or at least there's not some homage to that name, then I'm calling BS on Blumhouse and Universal, which would not be a big surprise. So I just needed to get that off my chest. So I can tell you for a fact how much I admire Jack Pierce's makeup work in the original film. They call Jack Pierce the monster maker because he is largely responsible for how we see Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, the Mummy, and the man was a genius at his craft in a time where special effects were largely based on what you could achieve with a paintbrush, some putty, and some spirit gum. Lon Chaney Sr., of course, was the master of disguise, the man of 1,000 faces, they called him. But Jack Pierce represented that next generation of practical special effects in makeup. And like Miles said, Kirk Siodmak, who wrote The Wolfman, introduced a whole mythology around the werewolf with the use of the pentagram being seen in the palms of his victims, and the concept of silver as a remedy against supernatural creatures, which he brought from antiquity and introduced to the 20th century movie-going public. He wrote the old gypsy proverb, even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfsbane blooms and the autumn moon is full and bright. That last sentence, when the autumn moon is bright, was actually the title, the original title of my first book. So that'll tell you a little something about what esteem I hold this movie. Now, the 2010 remake also holds a special place with me, despite its CGI warts and some rather obvious foreshadowing. It was a period piece, which cuts a lot of ice with me. And that gothic mood that the original Universal monster films are known for, they were able to pull that off in the 21st century. And that's something that right away, the new Wolfman film that comes out in a few days is lacking, because it's set in a modern time period. I like Benicio del Toro as the morose and brooding Lawrence Talbot, and he's not Chaney's affable, skirt-chasing Larry, of course, but that just means it's not a retread of the original, but it's reworked for an audience that I think appreciated his version of the haunted man character that Larry Talbot came to represent, as played by Lon Chaney Jr. So with all that being said, the 2025 Wolfman has a few bars to clear. And while I sincerely hope it will, I'm not very optimistic. Thanks to X and Z for allowing me to use their video and share it with you tonight. And like I said before, if you want to see the reviews of movies like Nosferatu, the Blumhouse Invisible Man, The Northman, be sure to find X and Z in the description below. And so here I would be remiss if I did not mention Nosferatu, which I have seen twice since it premiered on Christmas. Talk about a movie I was not disappointed with. Well, for the most part. Let me explain. So obviously, I know that Count Orlok and the 1922 Nosferatu film was stolen from Bram Stoker, right? It's a ripoff of Count Dracula. I know that, you know that, we all know that. But to be honest, that old silent film loses my attention at several points during the early reels. And so I didn't really remember how closely the story followed Stoker's original and how much had been appropriated from it. So I don't know what I was expecting when the lights went down in the theater, but I really wasn't expecting the story to follow as closely as it did. And because I have seen almost every version of Dracula that's out there, watching the young solicitor head out to unknown lands to do business with an eccentric nobleman, etc., etc., it just seemed so familiar that right away it lost something for me. Now that's my fault, right? That's on me and my expectations. So I can't hold that against a film that, like I said, everybody knows wasn't originally taken from Dracula. So that was something I kind of came to terms with. And then when I saw it a second time, I really enjoyed it twice as much. It definitely goes to some surprising places. It is very dark, and despite being a Dracula clone, there are so many things different about Nosferatu and Dracula that I almost don't care if they're based on the same character. They are different enough in appearance, in attitude, to be completely different vampires. One of the angles I've always enjoyed about Nosferatu was the plague bringer angle with the rats and how they portray the vampire with much more of a living corpse than a well-dressed gentleman going to a dinner party. As far as Robert Eggers' films go, I think this was his best film yet. And I know that's saying something, but that's what I think. It pulled no punches to get where it was going, and if we could just get Eggers to work on a werewolf movie, preferably based on my books, we'd be all set, wouldn't we? Well, it's been a couple of months without Dr. T. Broussard in pocket because he has been on a job or two since that time. See, Doc isn't just an expert on the occult for nothing, and in certain circles, his skills and services are in demand. So since this is a show about hunting monsters, and we're known to discuss the tools of the trade, for which we look forward to the return of Tex Grebner one of these days, I've asked Dr. T to share with us a little bit tonight about the kind of things he uses in his business, his toolkit, you might say, when he's called upon to perform different rituals or ceremonies. I think you're going to enjoy this one. I know I did. Here's Dr. T. Broussard and Doc Talk Shop.
Hello and welcome to Doc Talk Shop as part of Whiskey with a Werewolf Hunter. Tonight, I am going to attempt to take you all on a particular adventure with me and talk you through the closest I ever get to what you might think of as monster hunting. And by that I mean, what do I carry with me when I do a job which may or may not involve entities or things like that beside the work that I've been contracted to do. As silly as it might seem, I carry a briefcase of sorts, some might say a gun case that contains different sort of gear that I use, such as jars of ingredients or tools, tarot cards, ritual dagger, books, things like that. And that depends on two things. One, there are certain things I always carry with me, regardless of the job. And there are other things that I pack per job. For example, I will always carry around at least one divination tool, whether it's a tarot deck or runes for casting, something like that, because often unforeseen things will come up in a job and I will need to do divination to figure out what's going on the job. So you bring a tool like tarot cards or runes for casting. You also bring components for different potions and things, so you can mix them on site, or you'll have things like a flashlight, because I often have to work in the dark and not everybody has eyes like I have. I see well in the dark, most people don't. Now, with regard to monster hunting, aka dealing with entities, I have usually a book of devotions with me for religious means, or I have a book that has different incantations with me. I usually have both, because there are some entities that you can only deal with spiritual power, and that's why you need prayer, whether it's prayer of the client's persuasion or of your own, or a combination of both. And if it's not spiritual power that's being used, you want to use magical power, which is the power of will, and for that you would do incantations as opposed to prayer. Now, one of the most important tools in my kit is my grimoire, or spellbook, if you must. It is the book that contains all the particular system that I use. It contains the rituals of preparation, how to prepare the tools, and make the talismans and so on, all of it. So it is one-stop shopping when it comes to my particular system. And if I have it, I can almost always recreate everything else. When you're putting together a kit, having a copy of your grimoire is essential. Now, besides the grimoire, the next most important tool would be the athame or ritual dagger. The dagger is used for direction of energy, cutting through barriers that entities create, creating magical circles or magical barriers, depending on what you trace with it. And in certain instances, it can be used in sacrificial works as well. It represents the will of the individual doing the working, in this case, my will. The particular athame in this picture is significant because the handle is coyote bone. You see here one of the packets with my company displayed. That sigil there is known as either the Vive de Lucaria, and it's also known as Celestial Bane within the two systems I work. And packets like that typically contain herbs, spices, and basically remedies I give to clients depending on what they need. Here we have a marker. Always good to be able to mark out magic circles, make notes, things like that. A lot of what I do is recording information or making the invisible visible by pointing things out. It's not that people can't see with things that I do, it's that they're conditioned not to. So you use something like marker to make things obvious. Here is an example of a seal I prepared for one of the workings. This particular seal is used in creating a neutral spiritual space. It's used to protect a location from spiritual phenomena. You can find the design in the Lugarian conjure book I published years ago. Here we have a pouch for tarot cards, divination coins, things like that. Part of any good job, in my opinion, is showmanship. So it helps to have things that look a certain way to create the right atmosphere. Here again, we have a divination coin that is part of the tarot deck that I keep in my kit. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying yes or no, depending on the question you ask. Here's something that could be used to open someone's third eye. Obviously, the pineal gland being the physical manifestation of the third eye. Having things labeled is important, more for the client than for me. It helps to put them at ease, let them know what I'm doing. Here we have a tablecloth sorts. Again, you use that to create the right ambience, the right atmosphere to do the job that you're being called in to do. And you want your tools to represent the kinds of things that you work with, so it all works together to build up your current. Here we have a specimen jar. Again, those are very important depending on what job. You want to be able to collect things. You want to be able to bring things to the client. Here's an important tool that a lot of modern practitioners overlook, and that is offerings. Offerings are used, whether it's tobacco or other things, to deal with spirits, to pacify powers in the area, things like that. Sometimes a haunting is ended simply by making the right offering, whether it's incense, tobacco, or whatever combination. And also you want to have matches. And the less you have to ask the client to help you with, the better. So it's always good to be prepared for anything. Again, we have matches, just handy to have. whether for light or for ritual work, whatever. Another very important tool, cords for binding. The casting of spells by tying of knots goes back as far as Sumeria in biblical times. You pray, and when you say a certain number of prayers, you tie a knot, and the knot represents the spell being cast. Conversely, if you make a run of knots all the way around, and then you pray over it and you untie the knots, you are breaking the spell. So you have binding and unbinding as symbolized by the rope. In my particular system, whereas most other systems would use salt, we use ash from previous rituals. The ash provides spiritual protection. It's also a good foundation for most powders made for the doing of magic. Ash represents past investment. Here we have a tarot deck. I collected tarot at one point, but now I have so many that I really don't have any room for any more. This is a very good deck to travel with. It's not overly arcane, and most people have no trouble following it. Again, we have salt, which is sort of the opposite to the ash. It's just for purification. It's just to drive things away. It's always handy to have a magic kit. Here we have a mirror, very handy for getting people to pay attention, give them something to look at, let them look at themselves. It's a way of capturing their attention. Mirrors can be used for different kinds of divination or even to trap spirits if necessary. Here's my little book of incantations. It's the bare bones of what's in my spell book. This is available for sale. But it basically contains everything you would need to do a ritual on my particular system. Here we have my pouch of runes. This system of runes is one that I use. It's not common. Here's the pouch open. Here you can see the runes and the diagram that they are cast upon. The figure that they are cast upon represents the world via the paradigm that I use. And here we go, my kit again. Now, as I said before, it depends on the job I'm doing, but what you've seen today is what I always carry with me if I'm on the job. And with these various tools, I can deal with pretty much any kind of occult phenomena or even attack I might have to deal with on the road. And with that, I will say, Happy New Year, good hunting, and mind the moon.
Well, thank you, Doc. It's good to hear from Dr. T again, especially on a subject as personal to him as his professional work, and fascinating to see not only the kinds of things that he employs, but to learn the rationale behind them. We appreciate him, as always, taking the time to share with us. And that's going to do it for us tonight. We appreciate you being here for our 7th season debut, and we hope you'll stick around for the rest of the year. Remember to like and subscribe as you leave the bar tonight. And remember the links to my books, both Audible, electronic, and hard copies, as well as the werewolf hunting anthologies and everything else you need to know about the werewolf hunting world, are in the links in the description below, including our website, werewolfhunter.com. Thanks for coming by tonight and spending some time with us. We hope you've enjoyed yourself. We're going to see you again in February, but until then, let me leave you with a little something extra right after I wish you happy hunting and mind the moon.
I have followed wolven bodies east and west of fate. Who'd have thought a simple mountain boy could come so far on hate? The valleys catching fire in the mountains' evening glow. My soul is just a fugitive with nowhere else to go. From the swamps to the deserts and a wasteland paved with salt, every pound of flesh along the way was left there by default. Weary of my sorrow, my anger and my pain, and the bad sign I was born on that's left me half insane. I'm a man touched by vengeance, his heart tied up with scars, hunting monsters through the darkness, spirits through the stars. A son and a killer, chasing whispers of her name. I'm choking on the ashes of this cruel and lost campaign. I was standing on the precipice, the past written in her eyes. A violent reunion with the truth broke open wide. I think about the journey, every mile laid up in blood, and how revenge becomes redemption if silver kills with love. Here at the end, I'll gladly give